there are some advisors that really stand behind what I'm doing because it is stuff that they can't talk about because of the selling away and, the things that they think that their clients should know about. It's not like I'm trying to take money out of advisors' pockets, but also trying to educate people that there is a whole nother world outside of what the traditional advisors are talking about that people don't know about, for the simple reason that when I was an advisor, I couldn't talk about it. It was forbidden to talk about things like that because, it just was stuff we couldn't sell.
Sure.
All right, here we go. All right. So now that's weird.
I see we're live on YouTube on the meeting.
We're live on YouTube, but why is it? That's all right. We'll roll with that. I'm just going to turn the volume down on that, and then I'll come back over here, and then we'll just record it, and we'll go live. All right, man. We are live. Welcome, everybody, to Money School TV. And I've got an extra special guest. I got a friend, Anthony, from back in the days when I was an advisor. Anthony was one of the most successful advisors. He runs a company called PPS Retirement Advisors. We used them when we were doing any retirement plans. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're kind of going to just go back and forth, talk a little bit about employer-sponsored retirement plans. We're going to talk about the CARES Act and some of the new changes that the CARES Act brings to these employer-sponsored plans. And some of you may not know what I mean by an employer-sponsored plan. I mean a 401k, a 403b, 457s. They go by a lot of names. We'll not even get into it. Most people know them as 401ks. So Anthony, welcome to the show. And I'm really excited to have this because you're just a wealth of knowledge. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your company.
Sure. As you mentioned, I actually operate two companies, PPS Retirement Advisors and PPS Pension Services. PPS was founded in 1968. And so we've been around for over 50 years now. And we are kind of all things when it comes to qualified plans for businesses and their employees. So PPS Retirement Advisors is an independent registered investment advisory firm. And we have a team of advisors that work with business owners to structure qualified plans, help them to fulfill their fiduciary duties, structure and monitor the investment lineup, but then also, and I think more importantly, educate employees and participants and working Americans on saving for their future, maximizing their ability to build a pot of money and hopefully leave the job someday and retire comfortably. So I think advisors is a crucial role, not only from the business owner perspective, but from the employee perspective. We're educators. And people need help. And this is a prime example of a time where we really make a difference.
Yeah, that's for sure.
PPS Pension Services is a second company that is an administrative firm. Any employer that offers a tax qualified retirement plan to their employees, there's legal and technical work involved. There's discrimination testing and tax work, government forms that need to be completed every single year. So Pension Services does all of the administrative work behind the scenes to keep the plan in compliance with ERISA and all the DOL and IRS regulations. So our niche is that we're both technical experts as well as investment and education for the employees.
Well, I think it's more of a critical time to talk about these topics now than pretty much ever before in our history, not just because of the obvious economic, crash or whatever you want to call this, the COVID-19, the coronavirus, it's going by a lot of names, but let's just call this the economic crash of 2020. And one of the things I do a lot, I was an advisor for 16 years, as many of you know, but now today I just devour books. One of the books I love is the 501k plan. And Anthony and I were talking about this. So Ted Benna he's known as the father of the 401k because he was the one that actually got the first 401k approved. And one of the scariest things, I went in today and I was reading the foreword of this book. And one of the scariest things, and I think this is kind of going to sum up a lot of the things that you do and we can talk about, is where he's really talking here about what is actually going on in the world with Social Security and some of the social programs like Medicare and Medicaid, and really what a lot of people don't know. You remember we used to get, Anthony, we used to get the paper statement showing the Social Security benefits? Mm-hmm. You know how those are gone now?
Yeah.
But do you remember the last couple we got, how it actually had an expiration date on the end of, or on the bottom of it, real small print, and kind of
Yeah.
actually had the expiration date? Well, in this book, it goes on to say that we have now exceeded the point in 2015 where more benefits are being paid out than benefits are being collected for Social Security. So what does that mean? Well, if you owned a business that you operated like that, you would become bankrupt. But what does that mean for the government? That just means, well, they have to find a way to print more money. Didn't they just print $2 trillion? I'm not saying that's to bail this out. That was supposed to bail out Corona. But from what I'm seeing and what's happening with the ever-changing SBA rules is most of that money now is not going to Main Street like it was supposed to help local businesses, because now they changed all the rules again on the disaster relief loans. So I'm thinking maybe some of that money is being kind of hushed over to this, or at least I'm hoping. But I guess at the end of the day, not really caring too much about whether Social Security is broke or not. The most important thing to discuss is, what are you doing to plan for your retirement, seeing as though no one's going to bail you out? Pensions from back in the day, like our parents and our grandparents used to get, they're pretty much, they're dead. I mean, there's some of them out there, but they're very, very hard to find, I guess would be the word to say it. So let's just go a little bit, Anthony. I really want this to be more about you and kind of what you do, but what are some of the things you would say to the American public and to the investor out there that maybe is just a wee little bit behind? And now because of this, they're trying to say, okay, well, I don't know what to do. Do I contribute to my retirement, or do I, slow my contributions down to be able to afford my car payment, my tuition payments, and everything else? I mean, what are you've been through now, we talked about it, we've been through 3 of these recessions. What do you think this one's going to shape out to be, and what should people be looking at?
Yeah, I think it's important to take a step back, and you hit the nail on the head with Social Security. I think that most people view Social Security as a pot of money sitting in Washington, D.C. with their name on it, and someday that's what they're going to retire on. We both know that it doesn't work that way. The money that we're paying into Social Security today is being turned right around the back door and paid out to our grandparents or our parents. And, like you said, the problem we have in America is there's 10,000 baby boomers every day who are turning age 65. It's the biggest generation of workforce until our generation, and they're sucking that pool out. And there's not enough American workers to feed it right now to sustain that. So I think that people really need to give themselves a long, hard look. And when they have a retirement plan available through their employer, they need to be educated about it. And again, they need to maximize their use of it, because that's what's going to enable them to walk off into the sunset someday. It's not going to be Social Security. So, we give thousands of meetings every year to people all over the country. And the first hump is getting people involved. They have to start saving, and the sooner the better. We live in Buffalo, New York, so it's very easy to make the analogy. Your tax qualified retirement investments are like a snowball rolling downhill. You're compounding interest on top of interest year after year throughout your career. And the sooner you get that snowball started, the better off you are later on in life. So the biggest key for people, whether it's $2 a week or $20 a week, it's just getting in and getting going, because it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. I know you've probably used that quote before.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So the biggest key is getting started. Secondarily, if they're lucky enough to work for an employer that's generous enough to give them a contribution, a match, let's say, again, it's crucial to take advantage of that match. We talk about the market, and on average, a good market year might be if the market goes up 6, 7, 8%. Well, national average for employer matches is 25 cents on a dollar up to a certain cap. So every dollar you put in becomes $1.25 right off the bat before you even get started. You've made 25% interest on your money. But oh, by the way, it didn't even cost you $1, because in a regular 401k, that dollar is a pre-tax dollar. So had you brought it home through your payroll, it's really only cost you about 72 cents to end up with $1.25 before you even get started. So 401k with a match is probably the best financial deal anybody will ever make you, but you got to take advantage of it.
I agree with that. And, I'm glad you brought up the match, because I talk to a lot of people across the country with Money School and the Money Multiplier, the things we do. And we're always talking, obviously I talk about control. I talk about being in control of your money and having money available for opportunities, which means sometimes I'm actually fighting against people putting money into 401ks, at the levels that they are. But I will tell you the one thing that I advise every single time to people is if you have a match through your employer sponsored plan, you have to take advantage of that, because that is free money. That is money that you can't get that anywhere else, because there's not money falling out of the sky. But you know what? A match really is just that. It's free money, and you need to take advantage of every penny of that.
Yeah, 100%. And then also Roth provisions. I think Roth is extremely underutilized, especially for younger people. The power of getting tax-free interest is huge. For people of means, the ability to have money sheltered from RMDs later on in life, to be able to pass it to the next generation without tax. There's a ton of applications for Roth, and a lot of plans don't even offer it. Less than half the plans in the country have a Roth provision.
And that's a shame, because if you look at taxes, right? Are taxes going up or are taxes going down? Most people would say they're going up, but they don't always go up. But if they don't go up, they just find more shit to tax us on, don't they? Go to Florida, for example. Like, they have no state income tax, but every quarter mile you hit a toll booth. Those are taxes, folks. So they just find another way to tax you. So Roth IRAs, I think, are phenomenal. And I wish, and I don't know why. Why is it that more companies are not offering the Roth provisions within their plan offerings?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just they don't feel their employees would understand the tax ramifications of it. I think it's something that requires some education. So, a lot of companies don't have an advisor or somebody to educate people about stuff like this.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. I think that's exactly what it is.
I watch a lot of your stuff, and one of your main mantras is basically using your money to give yourself flexibility, whether it's flexibility in lifestyle or a retirement date or whatever the case may be. And I view Roth as a flexibility tool. It's another bucket of money that gives you the luxury of choosing how to structure your income in retirement. And maybe it keeps you below a certain tax bracket, depending on how you take your distributions. Maybe it helps you pass money on or pass it to charity and avoid taxes. Who knows? But it's another vehicle that creates flexibility for you. So
I agree.
I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah. And I think you're dead on right. So let's go back to the reason why companies don't have it. Is, you said the owners of the company, or the plan administrators, or the people doing it, they don't have advisors teaching them what this actually is. And they might say their employees won't understand this, but you know what I really think it is? They don't understand it. It also, everything starts at the top and flows down. So if they don't fully understand it, of course they're going to think that their employees don't, because the biggest problem, as Will Rogers says, in America is not what people don't know. The biggest problem is what they think they know that just ain't so. And that kind of goes right into that. So, and I don't know, I just don't understand what part of, pay tax on the seed, not the harvest, that's hard to understand. So I think a lot of times if we simplify all of these different terminologies, maybe they don't understand a Roth, but if they just understand, hey, if you were a farmer and you could pay tax on the seed, not the harvest, which one would you prefer? Well, most people would say, well, definitely I'd pay tax on the seed. I don't want to pay tax on the harvest. That's what you're doing with a Roth. It's that
100%. And you're totally right. The biggest key in our business is getting people to be comfortable and understand complex terms and embrace it. Investing is scary for a lot of people. And I attend a lot of meetings or seminars where, you have advisors throwing around expense ratios and share class and mutual fund and equity and bond. And these are average, hardworking Americans. You have to bring it to them on their terms. And, when I talk about retirement, the easiest way to explain saving for retirement is every dollar you put into your 401k is $1 closer to you not having to show up here anymore. That's how you should look at your 401k.
Everybody understands that.
It's the reality of it.
Yep. How quick you want to end the trading hours for dollars? Well, then that's your only way, is take control of your money, take control of your future. And the only way to do that is get started. Like, stop waiting, stop procrastinating, stop saying, oh, well, when this happens, I'll do that. Yeah. Well, when this happens and I'll do that will probably be the day you're like sitting there with your hands out, waiting for Social Security. And oh, whoops, by the way, Social Security is bankrupt. There is no more money.
And every day we spend money paying a lot of people. We pay the internet company, we pay the telephone man, we pay the gas man, we pay the electric man. When do you ever pay yourself? When do you pay towards your future? And when do you give yourself a raise? That's the other biggest mistake people make. is they'll sit down with me. I'll get them all excited about saving for their future. They say, Anthony, I want to save 5% of my pay. And then 10 years from now, we're sitting at the same conference room table and they're still saving 5% of their pay. Well, every single day, everything we spend money on gets more expensive. And so your savings have to keep pace with that. So when do you pay yourself and when do you give yourself a raise?
Yeah, that's important, because the inflation thing, although a lot of people don't even fully understand inflation, it's another one of those hidden taxes, because as your money loses value with, by the way, everybody watching this, just so you know, the Fed just printed $2 trillion. That money was printed out of thin air. Literally, it just fell out of the sky. Those printing presses that money has no value. So where does it get its value? It steals the value from your current dollars. That's inflation, folks. That's why milk costs more this year than it did last. That's why everything gets more expensive. Your current dollars are worth less every single day. So, like you were just saying, if that's all somebody did is set it up at 5% and said, oh, I'm good. You're not good, because every year you're losing something. I mean, whatever inflation is at that time, let's call it 2.5 or 3%. Every year you got to make that much more or save that much more. Otherwise, you're always going backwards. And eventually that 5% didn't do anything for you. And then that's why people are always just a wee little bit short for retirement, which let's segue and pivot. We're doing a lot of pivoting right now in life. Let's segue over to some of the new provisions that just came about in the CARES Act. So the CARES Act is a very tricky, I mean, this isn't even all of it, but this is kind of what I studied. It's just all the stuff from my accountant. And one of the things that they really made some kind of, I mean, for some people, some really good changes to how 401k loans work and how 401k withdrawals work. But I think people are so short-sighted and they want to just look at, oh, wow, that sounds great. I have access to $100,000 loan, or I have access to $100,000 withdrawal. They fail to realize the consequences of what that potentially will mean 3 years from now or a year from now. So it's easy to look at it and say, wow, that's great. I could use 100 grand today. But what is it that you are going to have to, what music do you have to face when that comes? So let's talk a little bit about that in these times, because these are hard economic times. People need money, or people are seeing unbelievable opportunities, because there's one or two things. You're either going to see this as an obstacle or an opportunity. The people that look at this as an obstacle, they're going to look at these provisions as a way to take money out of their retirement to pay for things today. And those things today might be necessities, but they might be frivolous things that they really don't need. But then there's the opportunity seekers who are out there finding opportunities, maybe real estate, and they're looking at these provisions as a way now to get more access to their money. But let's really, for both of those people, talk a little bit about the consequences that you and I spoke about offline on what that actually means when you take these different loans or these different withdrawals.
Sure. And I think you hit the nail on the head. There's some opportunity here for people. I don't necessarily think that that's what the provisions were created for, but we can get into that. I think overwhelmingly where we should start is that the provisions that the CARES Act created with respect to people's retirement plans are designed for people who are in dire circumstances. These are emergency provisions that allow Americans to get access that they otherwise wouldn't have to their retirement funds to bail themselves out of trouble. I think that was the government's aim towards this. Now, like you said, there will be other people who will use it for different reasons, and they're not necessarily right or wrong. But I think where we should start is people need to approach this as absolute last resort emergency provisions only. This isn't if you've had a credit card lingering out there that you'd like to pay off, but you just never gotten around to. This is if you have bills that are coming due that are going to significantly impact your family that you need to pay. That's what these were designed for. So if you want, why don't we just take a step back and maybe give your viewers a quick overview of what those provisions are, and then we can kind of go over the pros and cons if you want.
Yeah. Do you want to do it, or you want me to actually just read it? I mean, you probably know it like off the top of your head. I've got the provisions here. So let me have you do it.
30-second summary, because I've done it maybe 100 or 400 times in the last week. So the first provision is something called a COVID withdrawal. And under normal circumstances, what most retirement plans say is that when you put money in a 401k, and I'll just use 401k to make it easy, but this applies to 403b and other plans as well. The government puts some handcuffs on it. They say that in most circumstances, unless you're either 59 and a half, dead, disabled, or terminated, you can't access the money. It's going away for retirement, and you're not allowed to touch it certainly without tax and penalty. So the first provision is that the CARES Act created a window where basically anybody has the ability to withdraw up to $100,000 in total from their tax qualified retirement accounts. And there's no mandatory tax withholding up front on the money. They can spread the tax liability out over 3 years, and there's no 10% penalty if they're less than 59 and a half. So that was the window that the government has given people, where if you need some money right away to get yourself out of trouble, we'll let you go and take it. We won't charge you taxes on it up front. We'll even let you spread the taxes over a while. We're not going to penalize you. And oh, by the way, if you can afford to pay it back somewhere down the road, we will waive that tax liability completely. So again, for somebody in dire straits, it's a wonderful, wonderful option. Now, I created a piece the other day. It's a Clint Eastwood. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's the good. The bad and the ugly are, number one, I'm not sure that a lot of Americans will be in a position to pay this back. And the reason that I say that is, let's rewind 6 to 8 weeks ago. Americans are living on their budget. They have their monthly budget. They have their monthly income, and they're living life. Hopefully, sometime this summer, we're going to get back to that place. But I don't think it's out of the realm to say that the majority of Americans probably didn't have enough slack in their budget to be repaying $100,000 withdrawals once they get back to normalcy again. They have their budget, they have their spending, and there's not enough room in there to be writing $100,000 checks. So I think a lot of Americans that take these large withdrawals are going to struggle to put them back. And so if they don't put them back, then let's get to the bad and the ugly. And the bad and the ugly is, number one, we've all heard Warren Buffett say, you buy low and sell high. Well, they're doing the exact opposite of that. The majority of 401k investments in America are exposed to a good deal to equities. And most of those equities are probably 20% depressed right now. So they're taking what is right now a paper loss and realizing that loss when they sell out of their funds and withdraw their money. So they're taking a loss as they take the money out. That's problem number one. Problem number two is these taxes are going to come due. And what the government hasn't clarified yet is how they're going to treat this income. They've clarified that you can spread the taxes out over 3 years, but they haven't clarified if they're going to count all of the income for 2020 or if they're going to spread the income event out over 3 years as well. And so if you take a huge withdrawal this year, it might raise your tax bracket. Not only do you have to pay tax on the money, but you might have to actually pay more tax on the money because you've added up to $100,000 to your income this year. So that's a huge problem. And then number three, you're missing the wave back. Again, at some point in the next 3 years, I think I'm pretty comfortable saying the market will recover to a degree. And now your money's out of that market. You're going to miss that wave back. So now you've shot yourself in both feet. You took the loss on the way down. You missed it on the way back. And oh, by the way, let's go back to my snowball analogy. Well, now you've taken a big piece of your snowball away halfway down the hill. So you've permanently stunted the growth of your account for the rest of your working career. So again, there is some good to this, because if Americans are in that big of an emergency, they're not going to care about all that other stuff. They care about feeding their families and paying their mortgage and getting through this. But they need to understand the long-term consequences of what they're doing. And again, if you're sitting in your kitchen bored and you're looking at your cabinet saying, gosh, we should really refinish those. I've always wanted to do it. Let's pull some money. It's not what this is about. So that's provision number one, the withdrawal. The only other major one that affects employees is loans. Mm-hmm. The government increased the amount of money that somebody can borrow against their 401k. The traditional federal limits are that people can borrow up to half of their vested account balance, so half of the portion of their 401k that they own, to a maximum of $50,000. And so CARES Act increased those limits up to 100% of their vested balance to $100,000. So they basically raised the window and opened up more room that people can borrow against their account. Now, 401k loans are, in general, a pretty bad idea. And I think this is, again, something that people need a lot of education about because they don't understand the dynamics of how borrowing against your retirement account works. On the surface, most people say, if I need some money, I'd rather borrow it from myself and pay myself interest than pay a bank or a credit card. So 401k loan seems like a good idea to me. The problem is, again, number one, you're taking a piece of your snowball away halfway down the hill. So you're stunting the growth of your account long term. But problem number two, and this is the one that nobody realizes, is when you repay a 401k loan, your loan repayments come out of your net pay, not your gross pay, which means you're taking money you've already paid taxes in, paying it back into your 401k, and in retirement, when you take it out, it's going to get taxed again. So a portion of your loans end up being double taxed by the government. So it's really financially inefficient to borrow against your retirement account, much less borrow $100,000. So again, it's good because it gives people more access, but again, you're doing yourself some severe long-term financial harm. And the other problem is that the government said, not only will we let you take this huge loan, but we'll let you suspend making payments on it for 12 months so that you don't have to worry about making payments on your loan until you get back on your feet. Well, the problem we face in America is people are going to go spend that money. And then a year from now, when the sun shines back out and we're all back to normal, they're going to have this massive loan repayment start coming out of their paycheck every single pay period that wasn't there before. And it's going to smack them in the face. So that they're setting themselves up for failure later on. And worst case scenario, if they lose their job, most plans don't allow employees to repay their loans post-termination. So if for some reason, God forbid, they lose their job, that entire loan is going to come due all at once. And virtually nobody has the ability to pay it back because they just lost their job. And so at that point, now that loan becomes a taxable distribution plus 10% penalty if they're less than 59 and a half.
And that's really important to talk about right now, because everybody understands loans, and that is, a lot of times an easy way for people to access their money, and then they get to pay themselves back with interest, like you just mentioned. But the big thing that's scary right now is, what is your job security right now? I mean, are you working for a company that gives you the job security that will secure that you're going to have a job? Because if you did take a loan for, let's just say, $100,000 from your 401k, and then all of a sudden, a month from now, things don't improve, which they very well may not. I mean, we need to start realizing this is the new norm, and we need to plan for the worst and hope for the best, because that is definitely the only way you should be planning right now. So they take the money out, and a month from now, they get let go. So although it was a great idea to take the loan, now all of a sudden they have to pay $100,000 back to their retirement account. How long does the government give them, or how long do they have to pay that money back before it becomes taxable?
When somebody terminates, it's subject to the terms of the plan document.
Okay.
So that there actually are some plans that will allow people to continue repaying their loans post-termination.
I haven't found many of those.
Yeah. It's a provision that has to be set up when the plan's set up. And so most of our clients allow for that. And then that gives people the flexibility to continue on their repayment schedule, and they can send in money orders or ACH directly to the provider. But for plans that don't have that, basically it becomes a deemed distribution. The loan's considered delinquent at the end of the quarter when they've missed a payment. So for example, if I got terminated today, my loan will become delinquent at the end of the second quarter, at the end of June, and then it will default at the end of the third quarter.
So that's pretty important for people to understand, because now all of a sudden you potentially could have $100,000 taxable distribution from your 401k. And so now let's kind of roll these two together. Let's just say that did happen. Someone took a loan because they needed the funds for something, that was dire. And then all of a sudden they lose their job. They've now got $100,000 distribution, and their plan doc or their company doesn't allow them to make continuous repayments, or they just can't. Mm-hmm. So now they've got this distribution. So that's taxable. But now, remember, you were talking about the distributions where the IRS penalty can be, not charged on that. Would that apply in a case like that?
It doesn't apply to loans. Loans.
So if that loan is taken and that distribution happened because of loss of job, they don't qualify for that COVID provision that allows them to waive that early penalty, that early withdrawal fee.
They do not.
Yeah, that's important.
So what would happen is their loan would eventually default if they don't make payment on it. And then at the end of the year, their provider is going to send them a 1099. And that amount of that loan, their outstanding balance, will be deemed as a premature withdrawal now, because it's no longer a loan. And they'll be responsible for the taxes and the 10% penalty.
That's very important. And a lot of people do not understand that. And a lot of people don't quite understand how that works. So this is great stuff. What would be just one other final thing that you think it is very important for people to understand in these hard times, on everything we're talking about?
I think the biggest thing is, if you're fortunate enough to continue working and you haven't been terminated or furloughed yet, you need to keep saving. Continue to put money in, because now let's transition to the opportunity part of this.
Yes.
The market is depressed right now, and you're basically buying on sale. When I sit with employees and talk about investing for long term, downtimes in the market can be really powerful times for your 401k if you play your cards right. And right now, the blue light special's on, and you're buying on sale.
The rollback.
Yeah, and the way you need to look at it is during downtimes in the market, unless you're retiring today, I don't really care what my 401k is worth today. I care what it's worth 20 years from now when I want to spend it. But what I do know is every single Friday when I'm getting paid, I'm now hoarding shares, and I'm able to buy 20 to 25% more shares of the funds in my 401k than I was able to buy in mid-February. And again, I don't really care what those shares are worth today. I just know that I'm buying more shares, and eventually the value of those shares will turn around. So, when I sit with large groups of people and I try and break this down, I use a Pepsi analogy. And I say, Chris, if I was going to give you $10 every Friday, and I want you to go to Walmart or go to Wegmans and buy as much Pepsi as you can with that $10, well, what do you want to see happen to the price of Pepsi?
You want to see it roll back.
You want it to go down. Okay. Now let's fast forward. You're 65 years old. You got 1 million cans of Pepsi sitting in your basement. It's time to get rid of them. What do you want to see happen to the price of Pepsi then?
You want it to go up.
Go up. So the value of the asset you've spent all these years accumulating is worth more. Well, that's what we have going on right now, folks. Pepsi's on 30% sale. And so the people who are still working and have the ability to continue to save, you're buying on sale. So if anything, if you can afford to increase your deferral percentage to put more money in this market, you will pay yourself back 2.5 times fold when this thing turns around. So there's a great opportunity as well. The provisions are there, and this is a very grim time. So I don't want to seem too positive about what's going on right now. But it's also a great opportunity. And if people can afford to take advantage of this, like you said, once every decade or so, the market gives us the opportunity to really make a dramatic difference in our future, to change the color of our stars, to use a quote. This is it for right now.
Yeah. And it's unique. It's interesting that you say that, because remember that Will Rogers quote I said earlier. I get a ton of people, in our different coaching sessions and just on one-on-one calls, because that's what I do all day is talk to people. I hear a ton of people say, should I, my new contributions that are going into my 401k, should I put those into cash? I'm nervous about, putting any more money in the market. I said, that's the complete opposite of what you should do. Warren Buffett says to make money in the market, you got to do 3 things: buy low, sell high, and don't lose money. But you can't not lose money if you're not doing 1 and 2. So right now, everything's on sale. The absolute number one thing people need to do is be putting money in. If anything, if you can, if you're okay with the risk, I would say increase your risk tolerance on your contributions going in, because that gives you the ability to start buying even lower and lower. And a lot of people with this last little pop that we saw think, oh, it's all over. COVID's starting to taper off. The markets are going to start going back. Oh my gosh, you are probably very, very wrong. And I can't predict the future. My glass ball broke, but you know what? I do attempt to do that because I follow some very, very smart people, and those smart people have it figured out. And not going to kind of go too into it, but a lot of people are talking, is this a V-shaped recession? Is this a W-shaped recession? Or is this a check mark? Well, I'll let you guys decide. That number one, I can tell you it's not a V-shaped recession, because this is not going to go pretty like that. But, is it a W? Is it a V or a check mark? I don't know. I don't know. Are we in a recession or are we in a depression right now? Because by unemployment numbers, we are looking at depression-like scenarios.
Yeah. And my luxury is that I'm not a day trader, and the people that I talk to are not looking to get rich today.
You're very lucky about that.
So, I think the mindset that I try and get people to get around is, it doesn't matter whether it's a V shape, a W shape, an X shape. It doesn't matter, because investing for retirement is a long-term investment. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And so if you're 40 years old, okay, whether it takes this recession or depression, whatever you want to call it, whether it takes us 6 months to get out of this or 6 years to get out of this, what difference does it make to you? You're still going to be here, and you're still going to be working, and you're still going to be saving. So get in and get going, and don't make long-term decisions based on short-term situations. So, for the vast majority of people that I talk to, it doesn't really matter. I don't have a crystal ball either. And whether it gets worse before it gets better, or, we come out of this in the next couple of months, it doesn't really matter. You shouldn't make long-term decisions based on what's going on right now. The keys to 401k success, and you tell your viewers all the time, be diversified, make sure it's appropriate for your risk, pick good places and leave it alone. And that's what I try and tell people. So it doesn't matter what the market's doing right now. Buy on sale, continue saving, and don't make rash decisions based on what you see on the television every day.
Yeah, or just shut the TV off. That might be a good idea.
Yeah, because it's not how you have success for a long-term investment.
I agree. Well, I think this was great. So folks, all of you listening to this, if you have a 401k or you're running a company and you're looking for someone with the expertise, this is your guy right here. Anthony, how would they go about finding out more about your company?
Sure. Well, we have two websites, ppsadvisors.net and ppspensions.net is the technical firm. So for your viewers, I would go to Advisors. It's a wonderful website. We spent a lot of time building it. There's information for business owners on there. There's information for individuals who are just looking for advice on investing or saving or planning. So I'd go to ppsadvisors.net.
Wonderful. And for all of you that are watching that don't know about the movement that we've created, it's called MSTV, Money School TV. All these recordings, we're actually going to jump off this live and we're going to go and we're going to do a recording to teach everybody for MSTV a little bit more in depth about the things that we talked about. So you guys, if you have not seen what we've created, we're calling it the movement. Money School TV is the place. So join us there. And how you join us is go to moneyschoolrei.com/TV. It's $190 per year. That's your membership cost. And for that, we'll even throw in a copy of Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. So guys, join us for the movement. And thank you all for checking us out here and learning a little bit about your employer-sponsored retirement plans and some of the new CARES Act provisions. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.